The most misunderstood commodity on Earth, carbon credits. In 2016, 191 countries, representing 97% of global carbon emissions, signed on to the Paris Agreement. Each country committed to a certain amount of carbon emission cuts by a certain date. By the way, this has nothing to do with politics, what party you belong to, what God you believe in, or even if you believe or not in global warming or climate change. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding treaty on climate change. I'll tell you why that's important in a moment. The stated goal is to limit global warming well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Reality check. The global temperature has already risen 1 degree Celsius. Meanwhile, emissions have barely fallen, as you can see in the chart you're looking at right now. The blue vertical column bars you're looking at right now are the total CO2 emissions in the time since the Paris Agreement of 2015. In short, nothing has happened in the past 5 years. The longer nothing happens, the steeper the slope will have to be to hit 2030 emission targets. And far more drastic methods will have to be used to reach the same result. And that's the emission gap in 2030 chart you're looking at right now. As you can see, even if everything in the Paris Agreement comes together perfectly, it still won't even get close to the set in stone 1.5 degrees Celsius target. In short, the Paris Agreement is not enough. And most importantly, it's not working at all. Politicians fighting against carbon emissions is like bringing the cavalry to a nuclear war. That's why the effort to decarbonize the world is at an incredible inflection point. It's simple. We're on the brink of an all-out, no-holds-barred global war on carbon emissions. It's not just CO2 emissions, but also methane, which 1 ton of methane has about 25 times the heating potential of CO2 and gets abbreviated as CO2e for equivalent. And nitric oxide, which actually has about 298 times heating potential of CO2, and it also gets abbreviated as CO2 equivalent. The war on climate officially begins on November 1st, 2021 at the COP26. Expect all the media and all the global leaders to bring all of their arsenals to the launching of the war on carbon emissions. The COP26 is the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Remember, when I said it's important that the Paris Agreement is binding, here's why. The Paris Agreement is the Geneva Convention of the 21st century, only instead of protecting soldiers, it's protecting the planet. Countries that violate the agreement will be met with similarly harsh penalties. The courts are already ruling against the big emitters, and it's only starting. Look at this right now. Monumental victory, Shell Oil ordered to limit emissions in historic climate court case. 2 things are going to happen at the conference that is a global first. It's the first global report card for the Paris Agreement. In other words, every UN member state will have to reevaluate their progress against their previous commitments. Current estimates are that they'll find out that they're not even on track to limit global heating to 3 degrees Celsius. But you already knew that when a bunch of politicians get together in a room. Not much positive will happen. And this gets to my solution, that it's going to be the corporation, investors, and capitalism that saves the environment. It's also the first time nations will be required to exercise the ratchet mechanism. Every 5 years, each nation is supposed to ratchet up its nationally determined contributions to the next level to ensure even more aggressive targets are met. In short, they're going to discover pretty fast that they need to move more offensive pressure to cut carbon emissions. And the race is on. The key point is, this is one of the most exciting sectors I've ever seen. The largest public institutions like the World Bank, International Finance Corp, or the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, have all thrown all of their weight behind this movement. The largest pools of capital in the world, in the bond market, now called green bonds, have collected trillions of dollars looking to be deployed into companies that will aid in the war on carbon emissions. Household names like Apple, Microsoft, Disney, Google, and even oil giants like BP, Shell, Exxon, Chevron have made enormous commitments to decarbonize. Street talk for investing tens of billions of dollars into trying to solve this problem. And it's setting the stage for what I believe is one of the biggest opportunities I've ever seen for a financial investment. This is bigger than the gold market. It's bigger than the crypto market, and potentially even bigger than the tech sector. Because it grows at a mind-boggling pace, it will be a core part of every public market sector. This chart I put together here shows the path we are currently on, including emission levels projected to 2050. You see the opportunity there? That green arrow? That's $16 trillion. If you're watching this and you're a teacher like when I started out over 20 years ago, and you knew nobody in the stock market, you have the same access and the same ability as the smartest person at Goldman Sachs to make your fortune in this sector. Do you see how much money is at stake with this agenda? It's absolutely mind-boggling, and you're not going to see a penny of it unless you get on board. For example, the European Commission outlined its roadmap for the European Green Deal earlier this year. The total fiscal response by 2050 is estimated to be more than 7 trillion euros, and it's just starting. The University of Princeton estimated that the United States would require over 9 trillion in capital expenditures over the next 30 years to reach net zero emissions. The dollar figures and sheer speed required to hit carbon net zero are astronomical, almost unfathomable. These types of opportunities do not come around often, if ever. Think I'm exaggerating? Here's another example. It took approximately 150 years for the United States to build out its current electricity infrastructure. To meet the net zero goal, the entire system needs to be overhauled in 20 years. Carbon net zero will create the largest government work projects in history, and it's on a global scale. As one of the very connected and influential insider just told me, every single fund manager, investment banker, and family office I've spoken to wants to jump on board. The problem is they have no idea how. I have no doubt in my mind that I have found the single best way to invest in this sector. And I published it to my subscribers in my premium research letter, Katusa Resource Opportunities. Because imagine going back in time on the adoption curve and investing in Bitcoin back in 2011 or buying Amazon in 1995. This will be the most important commodity of the 21st century. Bigger than gold, bigger than Bitcoin, bigger than oil. But the absolute best part, it is very early in this game. I can practically guarantee you will not heard about this opportunity from anyone else. It's one of the most important pieces of research I have ever produced. The war-era spending taking place to react to climate change will irreversibly alter the investment landscape. And this is going to be a major investment theme and movement for the next 3 decades. There are few, if any, investment angles to play this sector right now, which is in its absolute infancy. And there's no doubt we are very early to this trend. Imagine being bigger than gold and Bitcoin combined. This is a brand new, little known commodity sector, which over the last 3 years has crushed the NASDAQ, gold, the S&P 500, even Bitcoin. Look at the chart. That's that green line. You might have heard of carbon credits, but let me explain the reality. Carbon credits are the cornerstone of an incredible financial revolution to help all corporations reduce their cost of capital right now. It's the global race to net zero. Again, not in 1 in a million investors know how to play it. But as you're watching this, governments around the world are firing up the money printing presses to react to climate change. And it will irreversibly alter the investment landscape. It's going to make governments' unprecedented financial response to COVID look like pennies. Of course, as with all major disruptive shifts, especially one of this magnitude, there will be huge winners and massive losers. In fact, there'll probably be more losers than winners. I've seen all sorts of sectors, manias, and the next big thing in my 20 years of investing. But this will be the biggest of them all. It's also the biggest check I'm writing ever. You can either dawdle around in your own echo chamber of misconceived facts and conclusions, or open your mind to the beginning of the biggest financial revolution ever. It's your future, so use it. And it's where I'm focusing a significant portion of my liquid net worth over the coming years, starting with right now. Stay safe.